Look at that little Autobot to beat up. Ha ha ha. Decepticon! Wow! I wish I had some help. Need a hand? Thanks for the help. What'd you say your name was again? No problem. My name's Bumblebee. We did it. We hit 100 subscribers. Thank you so much. I could not have gotten here without y'all. Generation 1, Bumblebee.
Hello, Legotransformers fans. Today we have Legotransformers Generation 1 Bumblebee. Now, Bumblebee is a Volkswagen Beetle, but he was a mini racer. What that means is he came from the Minibots line, which was not actually anything like Micromasters. Instead, what they were smaller robots that turned into gadgets. I think it was called Microman. I believe Soundwave was from this set as Cassette Man, and all of the little cars were squished down to be penny racers. And they were supposed to represent real toys. You know, those penny racers where you pull them back and they roll forward and you put a penny in the back to make them go. Anyways, so Bumblebee is a Volkswagen Beetle squashed down to be a little penny racer car in Generation 1. And then, for the show, they made him close to a Volkswagen Beetle. So to capture the Volkswagen Beetle look on Bumblebee, I use a lot of yellow pieces. A couple different kinds of yellow. This orangish yellow, a more regular yellow piece, and a little bit of a bright yellow. And all the pieces I use, I try to incorporate curvature. Curvature in the front, because his hood is curved. The Volkswagen Beetle's front is curved, that's why it's called a Beetle. There's a little flat piece here. There's black for his windshield, since he had darker tinted kind of windows. The top has that more orangier look. That's because I use these little plate pieces here. And I have some corner curved pieces, which is kind of funny because the actual Legotransformers crossover between Lego and Transformers, Bumblebee is coming out. And he actually uses these same corner pieces on his corner, so I just found that kind of funny. I had designed this guy before I even saw any pictures of him. And then I have a little dark red stud for an Autobot symbol. For where his head would be, in the actual toy it flattens in as a flat panel, but obviously on the Lego scale these are so much smaller, so I use a little angle piece, a little stud, and a triangular piece. He looks very similar to my Cliff Jumper design. That's who I based him off from. So we'll bring in Cliff Jumper, one for a size comparison, and two to compare the two. So you can see they're about the same size. The only difference is Bumblebee is a little bigger because I tried to incorporate those curved pieces in a way that was more roundish, more Bumblebee-ish. Whereas Cliff Jumper, I try to use slanted curves that were more sleek and aerodynamic looking. The head design is a little bit the same on the back. Here they're both from the front view and from the other side. And you can see how that curve incorporates into Bumblebee, making him look like he has Beetle kind of bumper, wheel well kind of things going on. Even though his wheel is kind of outside of it. It was just the design. I couldn't fit it in to the right spot I wanted it. But I think it looks great right where it is. And I used silver wheels on Cliff Jumper, but Bumblebee I decided to use black wheels on. And I think they look great. Okay, let's compare him to his buddy Optimus Prime. So once again, you can see Optimus Prime is huge compared to Bumblebee, just the way it should be. Bumblebee is the small little companion to Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime's little buddy. Front view, side view. And now let's compare him to the size of a Lego man. So here we have our little measuring man standing next to Bumblebee. And you can see he towers over the little beetle. That's just to give you an idea of how big my Lego Transformers are. Okay, now, without further ado, let's transform Bumblebee. To transform Bumblebee, much like Cliff Jumper, we are going to tip his front end up and pull it outward. I use the same technique where I use these little Technic-like pieces with little pluses in them. You can get them in Star Wars speeder sets. I use some black ones here. I also use the same pin and hinge kind of technique. On top of that, we'll turn him this way. Now he can stand up. Now you can see his standing. The top of his car becomes his chest. The front becomes his feet. Let's turn out the wheels and rotate out the little hands. Now for Bumblebee, I decided to use yellow hands. I know the actual toy, the arms are all black, but I wanted to break up the color variation, kind of give him that Bumblebee-like lines in between. And I believe his hands were yellow in the show. So I think that worked out very well. And we then rotate his head around. Bumblebee has a face in the show. And he's a lovable character. So I gave him a plate here to be his face. And so you can just imagine that that's his face. He has eyes and mouth and nose in there. And then, because he has those two little horns and that pointy helmet, I just gave him an angled slope piece for a head. Because at this scale, it's hard to fit all those tiny details in. And you sacrifice one for the other. Like I could use a little clip to make horns, but then I wouldn't have the triangular shape of the head. So I decided to go with the triangular shape of the head for his G1 robot mode. So you can see he's very compact, and I like the way he looks. Even the back of him looks like Bumblebee. He's got black legs, he's got yellow back, and he looks very stout. Bumblebee was a little chubbier because he was at Volkswagen, so his belly kind of stuck out a little bit more in the Generation 1 cartoon. And here, the various yellows also break up the look, so he's not boring to look at. He's actually very nice looking, very unique. Look at the way the light glares off of his shiny yellow chest. It's pretty awesome. The Autobot symbol breaks it up, and there's his feet. These side pieces, these side curve pieces, I think really added the extra detail he needed that Cliff Jumper didn't have, because Cliff Jumper is supposed to be sleeker, and Bumblebee is supposed to be a little bit rounder. So here we have Lego Bumblebee in robot mode. And let's just look at some articulation real quick. Articulation, he has very little, but he has some. His head can rotate. His shoulders go outward, inward, up, and down. His feet can kind of rock back, rock forward. Oh, and he has waist swivel because of the little T-joint connector in there. So why did I make Bumblebee as the next transforming robot? Well, when I was at the Brick Fest, a lot of people came by asking me about their favorite Transformer, and he wasn't in a display. And that was Bumblebee. So, I decided this time around, I had to make Bumblebee. He had to be an up-and-coming Transformer. Now, I've always had, in my heart, a little favor for Cliff Jumper. But that's because Generation 1, Bumblebee wasn't really that big of a star at the time. But then when the movies came out, and then Prime and all these newer series, Bumblebee takes a pretty leading role. He is pretty much second in command to Optimus for the most part. So they did do a good job. I think the movies made Bumblebee cool. And so everybody loves Bumblebee. So I said, it's the time I make a Bumblebee. And of course, since most of my Transformers are Generation 1 stylized, this is Generation 1 Transformers Bumblebee. Now for size comparisons. So the first one we'll compare Bumblebee to is Cliff Jumper. Here we have Legotransformers Cliff Jumper and Legotransformers Bumblebee. And they are the same size in robot mode. Bumblebee is a little bit taller because of the way I designed his head, but not by much. So I think that's kind of cool, the difference between them. Cliff Jumper being sleeker, Bumblebee being a little more round. And they really look great together. They're two cool little buddies. Move Cliff Jumper out of the way and bring in Optimus Prime. Now you can see, I've got to zoom out a little bit even, because Optimus Prime is just that much bigger than Bumblebee. Which is exactly how the figures would be. Bumblebee was tiny compared to Optimus Prime. And I'm sure there'll be similar size comparison to the actual Transformer Legos crossover figures. Now let's take the big boy out of here and compare the Lego Man. And the Lego Man is just slightly smaller than Bumblebee, which oddly enough in the Generation 1 show, this would kind of be the size relationship between Bumblebee and Spike. Which is weird because Bumblebee was a car that Spike could ride inside of, but when he turned into a robot, he was just slightly bigger than Spike and his father. But you can blame that on mass shifting. So let's move this little guy out of the way. Let's take one last look at Bumblebee, the heroic Autobot. So if you like Lego Transformers and you want to see more of my creations, definitely leave a like and definitely subscribe to the channel. Also, if you know anyone else that likes Lego Transformers, share my videos. Thanks for watching. Coming soon.